I believe in gender equality insofar as the government can protect gender equality. It's important to realize that there are certain biological differences between men and women, which will probably always exist. I should take that back because men and women do change. It's true. I was reading something about how the Y chromosome in males is shrinking. It's losing genes or something. I'm not a scientist. I don't exactly know what it means, but the general idea is that men are much more divergent. They change a lot more than women do, and this makes sense when you think about evolution and all that stuff. But anyway, guys have more muscle mass. They have denser bones. They have more collagen. They can, run faster, jump higher, etc., etc. Women have children. Men can't do that. Women are a necessity for humanity to survive. If all but one man died, humanity would be absolutely fine because women can create human life. But if all but one woman died, we're totally fucked. The point I'm trying to make is that there are differences between men and women, but there are reasons why men and women are both important. And there's an argument you can make that, in a sense, at the core, women are substantially more important than men when you look at these reasons. Men serve as kind of and from an evolutionary standpoint, I don't mean today, protector, hunter, etc., and the women were literally the ones who make humans. And thus there is an extremely relevant and important role that women play in society. But times have changed. As we've become increasingly overpopulated, I'm not saying necessarily overpopulated, but as more and more humans begin to exist, there will reach an apex in which we have overpopulation. Some people say we're already there. Some say that we will never reach there because the birth rate goes down. When this happens, the importance of the female as just a creator of life is diminished. And I don't mean I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I'm trying to say that today, it is much less important for women to have children than it was 100 years ago when we were rife with disease, we were struggling, and we were, not even 100 years ago, maybe 200 years ago, right? Today, not many people are having kids, the planet is hugely populated, and humans are at no risk of going extinct unless we overpopulate and destroy our planet. There's not going to come a point where we just don't reproduce enough and then eventually there's no humans left. So this means that there's an opportunity for women to take a step up in our society and work alongside men in roles that were traditionally viewed as more masculine. But with this is the pendulum swing, where at one point you had it here where men worked and women were at home with the children. The pendulum swings down. It reaches the middle where we have reasonable and rational gender equality and choice, where some women can be mothers, some women can be at work, and some men can be fathers who stay home and can be at work. And this, to me, is where we have reason and understanding. But now we're going back up the other direction, where boys are bad, men are evil, all men are rapists, kill all men, cancel white people, etc. And it's getting a little too extreme. We don't want the pendulum to keep going back and forth. We want it to stop, and we want to have balance and equality. And thus we have this article that I should now probably talk about after 3 minutes. This is from the BBC. Why has feminism affected the mother-son bond? It says, you're a feminist, you're pregnant, it's a boy, what next? And I and many other people were shocked to see this because, what do you mean? You're not going to love your child because it's a boy? That scares the hell out of me. It doesn't matter what your gender is. It doesn't matter what your biological sex is, whatever you want to call it. Admittedly, this is weird for me, okay? I have trouble with this because, look, I try to be respectful in all things. I'm not always perfect, but I try to be respectful. Sometimes I get angry, admittedly. But there are articles and professors saying there's no such thing as biological sex. So what does it mean that your son's a boy? Or that your child is a boy? Does it mean anything? If you're going to argue there's no biological sex, I'm confused as to what feminism actually holds true. I don't know. Feminist mothers share with Nastaran Tavakolifar the complexities of bringing up a son. One mother feels she has failed to impart her feminist values to her 17-year-old son, who insists on listening to songs with misogynistic lyrics. Another mother confesses that she is conflicted. On one hand, she thinks men have had their turn at the top of society, and now they should keep quiet. On the other hand, she wants her 15-year-old son to be heard. This is a really good note right here. I'm not going to play, it's a podcast, I'm not going to play it. But this is a good point. It's really easy to be someone who believes in, women stepping up and men stepping back until you have a son and you want your child, regardless of who they are, to succeed. But why would we want to build a world where we tell men to be quiet and then we have to explain to our children why they're going to be second-class citizens? I don't think today that we want to do that to our daughters, although people do. They explain that women should be traditional and be in the home. Personally, I think individuals should be allowed to choose what they want to do, and we should guarantee equality of opportunity and do away with things like sexism and bigotry, etc., just in a liberal kind of way, like peaceful understanding. Look, if a woman wants to be in the home with children and she doesn't want to work, hey, more power to you. In my opinion, if a guy wants to do that, hey, more power to you. Hey, by all means. If a woman wants to get a job at a company, hey, more power to you. I think a lot of it should be based off of merit. Are you a right fit for the company? Are you going to do what you need to do? But thus we have the problem of, are we going to have feminists who want, as it says, who think that men have had their turn at the top of society and they should keep quiet, but then what do they tell their children? Are the mothers going to have conversations with their sons? Men used to be on top, but it's time for you to not have a say in how things are run. That's not okay. We want an equal society. We want everyone to have the choice, to be free, and to have their voice heard. We don't want to create oppression, but I fear that there are some people who do. I have been told by some people on the far left, feminists, intersectional feminists, they said to me, it's our turn now. I don't believe in turns. Maybe it's because I've never had my turn necessarily. Sure, you can argue patriarchy and all that, but I don't come from your traditional Boy Scout Catholic white family. I come from a mixed race public school family from the south side of Chicago. I want to make sure we never return to these systems of a dominance based on one person's identity. We don't need that. We think about this. Let's talk about meritocracy. The idea that the best suited for the job are the ones that succeed. If you arbitrarily keep out women or minorities because of racism, you are actually restricting meritocracy. There are many people who are black, Latino, whatever, Asian. There are people who are there are women who have done great things, who have accomplished great things and invented great things, and we want to make sure all of the great ideas and those who have the talent can succeed. Plain and simple. So racist policies that keep out certain races is an affront to true meritocracy. And that's why I'm concerned when I see statements, against men or against white people. I'm like, no. We want to make sure everyone's lifted up. We don't want to push people down. We want all of those who are passionate and willing to have an opportunity, plain and simple. It says, on the Sun side, Nasran talks to a man who says he couldn't trust his mother has his best interests at heart because she was a feminist. He felt so strongly about this that he set up a political party to assert men's rights. That is mind-blowing. Let me say this. I believe that there are issues that mostly affect men. Divorce courts, for instance. But I've heard some really compelling arguments from people who are actually what you'd call anti-SJW as to why they don't like men's rights activists either. For one, it's still identity politics, and they don't like it. Anti-SJWs tend to be pretty opposed to it. There are a lot of people who are, MRAs as they called it, who oppose feminism as well, and you might see that some kind of weird overlap. But admittedly, those who are very anti-identitarian, anti-identity politic, disagree with men's rights activists as well. And what I was told, I said, what about dangerous jobs? And they said, that's a choice. No one's obligating men to be, working coal mines and nuclear power plants and things like that. They don't have to. They choose to do it. Women don't choose to do it. And I'm like, okay, I can agree with that. But admittedly, there are things when it comes to family courts, when it comes to prison sentences, when it comes to victims of violent crime and suicide and fundraising for medical issues, men do face a lot of these issues. It's unfortunate then that so much of what you'd call look, I don't follow MRAs or anything like that. But a lot of what I've seen from even their own subreddit is pretty hardcore. I don't necessarily want to call it misogynistic, but you can tell there's some kind of animosity or resentment against women that's not too dissimilar to what feminists have against men. And I think all of that should be done away with. And that's why I think whether or not you think men's rights are a good thing, you've probably crossed into a territory where you've become an other. And that's why it's probably not a good thing to stick with. Which is why I also think that feminism, at its core, the idea of gender equality, equality between the sexes, is a really good thing. You have to keep in mind what that word means to everyone else. And that's why I do not like using labels to describe myself, except for the actual accurate label of social liberal, because it identifies strict policies that are well documented throughout history that I tend to believe in. I'd like to be accurately represented, please. They say research shared with Nasran puts forward a surprising finding that men now feel more loved by their mothers. Good news. Nasran hears from a 25-year-old who says he can share everything with his mother. I felt like that's been a trope within our society. In contrast, research shows that men brought up in the 1950s said they couldn't open up and be affectionate with their mothers because of the masculine culture that dominated before feminism. And then they say it's an image of young son. I had another article. I'm not going to get into it. But this was an interesting thing to pull up because they have this conversation where I don't believe it's necessarily definitive, but they do say that feminism has affected the mother-son bond. Why has it happened? But it looks like there are good things that have come from feminism. There are admittedly bad things. Nothing is perfect. And that includes feminism. That includes our court systems. It includes literally everything. There's always going to be a downside. But we want to maximize the good that we can do. I fear that we are moving ourselves into a culture where we are going to have racism and sexism, and it's not going to be very different. The pendulum came down. People believed in equality, not perfectly, and now it's swinging back up, where we're going to have just an inversion of, it's still going to be racism, it's still going to be sexism. People are going to attack those for being white just because they're white. They're going to attack people just because they're men. They're going to make assumptions about men. They're going to tell you not to be friends. They're going to say all men are rapists, kill all men. None of these things are okay. It is never funny to joke about the killing of an entire racial, gender group, whatever. Well, admittedly, I think there can be jokes made in this regard, but these are not necessarily jokes. They're political statements that might be inside jokes, but convey a message that can be terrifying to people. Right now, a lot of people are going to say, but white men are on top. Call it whatever you want. There's no reason to diminish. Let me put it this way. What about like a 5'2", scrawny, thin-haired, very weak and effeminate white male? Are you going to put him in the same bucket as a 6'5", Arnold Schwarzenegger type? It's just not fair to assume that all white men, all men, etc. And I'm not making the not all men argument. That's silly too. I'm simply saying we should have compassion for the individual based on the quality of their character and not the color of their skin. Anyway, stick around. I got one more video coming up in just a few minutes, and God, it's going to be so partisan.